Who are some guys that you've watched this year that are draft eligible, Brad, that you are kind of planting your flag on here early?
Yeah, one guy we talked about forever ago that I said it was a hot take. It was an intentionally hot take when I said I think Jaylen McMillan's my favorite wide receiver on Washington. He might be the third receiver taken in the draft from Washington, but nonetheless, I love my guy Jaylen McMillan. Came back for the Pac-12 championship game. I think he's your classic. I don't do comps. I don't have comps. Maybe one for Cade Stover, but he's like your classic big slot, fluid route runner. I think super smooth over the middle. Yeah, good nuance to his game. Like I think breaks off routes with good footwork, no wasted movement. I think he attacks DB's leverage really well, kind of gets in their hip pocket, gets in their blind spots, and then finds ways to get open. And I just like him too because he can win deep. He can catch tunnel screens and get yards after the catch. He also is a good ball tracker in the air down the field. He's just to me that classic like vertical threat out of the slot. I guess I should watch more of him as a blocker, which would be an element there. I obviously did not filter to blocking snaps for my favorite guy in the draft, but just like a 6'1", 200 pounds around there, and just a very fluid mover. I think that new kind of prototype of the big slot. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, I recently watched Jaylen McMillan again, and he was pretty impressive to me. I mean, just he has an ability to get open, find those soft spots in the zone. He's not as fluid as like Jackson Smith-Njigba was last year, but he wins in pretty similar ways. Like, right, he finds the leverage, he understands the position really well. He's great against zone coverage, and I think he's a pretty decent athlete as well. So he's somebody who I think is getting lost in this receiver class. So I'm glad that you shouted him out. First guy I want to shout out, Notre Dame linebacker Marist Liufau. This dude I did not really know about, and then I'm popping on some Notre Dame tape, and he is the long-haired linebacker in the middle of that defense who is flying everywhere. I was actually watching, man, I was watching, I can't remember if it was Cam Hart or if it was Howard Cross, their defensive tackle, but I was actually watching somebody else, and he kept popping on tape, and I was like, okay, I'm canceling my afternoon plans, and I'm watching another player because I've got to get to this dude, number 8, and I've really enjoyed him. It's not a strong linebacker class. You know, Barrett Carter from Clemson announced that he was going back. We've got Edgerrin Cooper in the draft. We've got Peyton Wilson in the draft. Danny Stutzman from Oklahoma also said that he's going back. So a lot of the guys who could have potentially been in the top 5 linebackers of this class are going back to school now. Liufau, if he is in the class, he is, to me, going to be a top 5 linebacker. Just the way that he plays is so great. And you guys saw it on the screen there. He's got an 89.0 coverage grade over the last couple of years. And I think it's just that fluidity, that explosiveness, that recognition, that experience that he has. To me, he's not getting talked about enough. He hits you with a ton of power, and I think he's got great range in coverage, even if the instincts and I think the feel is still a little bit of a work in progress. He's enough of an athlete to where you say, okay, I'm going to bet on this. We're going to keep working with him in coverage because I think he's got the athletic ability, that fluidity to be one of those linebackers that carries a lot of value that you can draft decently high. So he is somebody, Liufau, that I have watched lately. I didn't get to him until a couple of weeks ago, but he's somebody who really impressed me, and I like him a lot in this linebacker class.
I think one of the top 5, like not cliches, but like when you're a draft guy, which I'm starting to feel like I am one now, is you say I was watching someone else, and this guy just kept popping up on tape.
It's
and I had
true,
to pivot.
man. It's true.
It's so true. Oh, it's the truest thing ever. No, I've now experienced it. I also know that the urge to tweet out when a guy that you liked a couple years ago like flashes in the NFL, it's impossible not to fire up a tweet. Like you just got to do it. Oh my goodness,
yeah. And it's the best because it can happen at any time, right? It could happen in training camp. It could happen in their first year. It could happen in their second year. It could happen in their 10th year. Whatever. Yeah. You're pulling out the draft take. If they make one good play to validate the scouting report, you're tweeting it out. And you're making sure everybody knew that you like this guy pre-draft. Just wait until you start getting into those moments where it's like, oh, I was watching somebody else and then I saw this guy, and he ends up being like a freshman or a sophomore. So you can't even evaluate him yet. You got to wait an entire year for that to be the case. That was Luther Burden for me a little bit this year, the wide receiver from Missouri who could very well be wide receiver 1 next year. He is somebody who is like, damn, this guy could be wide receiver 3 in this year's class, and he's not even eligible yet. So we'll get to him, and we'll get to a lot of those other guys. Who else you got on this list?
Yeah, he's a star for sure. So the next one here is Cade Stover out of Ohio State. And I
Oh,
think for
man.
me with him, like he's the classic tight end that'll go probably, I don't know, round 3, maybe round 4, and just immediately be a very solid inline tight end. I think he is a good blocker. I mean, not a great blocker, but a capable blocker, a willing blocker, and then sure-handed. Like I mentioned, I don't do comps. He does kind of have shades of like a Jake Ferguson, and not just because Jake Ferguson's his hot name right now, but you and I went to the Senior Bowl that year when Ferguson, I thought, flashed as much as kind of any player in that class. Had a miraculous catch in one of the practices, and I went back and watched a lot of Wisconsin tape afterwards. But like, just like your big buddy guy that can win up the seam, another guy like you mentioned that finds soft spots and zones. He's not a great athlete, but sure-handed, has their 0 drops on the year, and does have a decent average depth of target. So it's not just like he's catching a bunch of screens and quick outs and leaking and getting, just easy targets. He does run routes down the field, some corners, some post routes that were impressive. So yeah, like he's not the sharpest guy. He's not the most explosive guy, anything like that. But he's just so solid. And I think a team will take him, pick 85 to 125 and just be happy with that pretty much immediately.
Yeah, I like Stover, man. He is just I agree completely with your assessment. He's just a really solid football player. He's somebody who's going to be to play in the league for a while. I don't think he's going to be this early round pick, and maybe not even top 75 pick because this draft is stacked, but he is somebody that you want on your team as a tight end 2, as a tight end 3, as a special teams type of a player. And if you ever have an injury to your tight end lineup, like he can definitely move up the depth chart because he's got plenty of starting experience now at tight end. Yeah, funny story about him. He was actually a defensive player when he was coming into college. He's been a defensive end before. He's been a linebacker. Then they moved him back to defensive end. Then they moved him over to tight end. So he's only been a full-time, okay, I am a tight end for, I think this is his 3rd year now as a full-time tight end. And he gets it, man. He's just a football player, loves the physical parts of the game, and you need that for a backup tight end. So I agree with you. Really solid football player. I like that. He would have been somebody who could have been on my list as well. I'm going to shout out Auburn cornerback DJ James. And I don't know, like some people might hear him, some people that are really in the draft and be like, oh, yeah, okay, I know who DJ James is, of course. And there are other people who you hear of guys in this cornerback class, the Terrion Arnold, the Kool-Aid McKinstry, Nate Wiggins, Kalen King, right? Kamari Lassiter, a lot of other corners that you might hear before DJ James' name. And to me, he's in that tier. I don't know if he's in tier 1, but like he's close to he needs a lot more recognition is basically what I'm saying. You see this over the last 2 years, over 800 coverage snaps. So that's not like total snaps. That's coverage snaps that he is playing. 91.8 coverage grade, an elite coverage grade. And in single coverage alone, this guy loves press man coverage. He's 6'1", and he's a little bit slender. He's like 165, 170 maybe. So the weight is a bit of a concern, and you definitely see that on tape that this is a skinnier player. But he's fearless. He'll get up in your face, very comfortable with his back to the ball. His movement skills are fantastic. The explosiveness, the body control, which, it better be because he's at a lower weight, but it is. So you don't want to take that away from him. Just love this mentality that this guy plays with. He's got a lot of good ball production over the last couple of years. And when it comes to teams that are very aggressive in how they play, whether it's allocating a lot of pressure up front and playing man coverage in the back, or just straight up loving to say, hey, you go shut down that player and just letting them be a good cover corner. That's the type of dude that DJ James is. So to me, it's a nice cornerback class, and there are a lot of names that people are talking about. DJ James is not getting mentioned enough as one of the best cover corners in this class.
I love it. I feel like Auburn low key just has been pumping out like good day 2 corners for years now,
man. Yeah. As a noted Tampa Bay Buccaneer football watcher, can confirm that with both Jamel Dean and Carlton Davis. So, all right, who's your last guy?
Yep. So sticking with the same position, Oregon cornerback Kyree Jackson, who jumped out to me in the Colorado game back when Colorado was appointment television, which seems like so long ago. But a big physical player. I think he's like 6'3", 195, around that range, but still has good fluidity, good lateral agility, can flip his hips pretty well. The first Washington game, they went after him a little bit, and I think he bounced back in the second one. Obviously, they lost, and Washington did score a bunch. But I think you saw them target the guy that was not being covered by Kyree Jackson for a lot of those reps. I think there was one Odunze bomb against him, but nevertheless, like
Odunze gets bombed against everybody, so
exactly.
everybody gets one. He gets one free mulligan when he's going up against Odunze.
Exactly. Only fair for like a top 15 pick. But yeah, so like I think really for him with me, like he can jam at the line. He can also sit back in zone and a cover three and play his deep third. I think he has very good spatial awareness. Like I said, pretty good, laterally for his size, but then also is willing to throw his body around, come up and make tackles, run the alley, and like be an Oregon DB. He's a transfer from Alabama. You can tell he has, kind of a lot of that. Like I mentioned, like early down zone, late down man, and just kind of feels comfortable in both environments. Like I don't know how early he'll go. I don't really know how any of these guys are. That's your job. But I think tools wise, a very intriguing player. And then I love corners that want to tackle. It's just fun that way.
Yeah, I think he's got top 50 tools. I think that the big question with him is going to be, certainly, I don't mean to say this is just like a cop out, but confirming the athletic test at the combine is going to be big for him. And then team interviews, right? Because like he was suspended at Alabama, he leaves Alabama. It's like, all right, well, you had the chance to, and I can't remember where he was before then, but it was a much smaller school. I think it was a JUCO school. It might have been Independence. It might have been the Last Chance U school, if I remember correctly. But he was at a smaller school. Then he transfers to Alabama, plays a little bit that first year, a little bit more that second year. Then he gets suspended. Then he transfers over to Oregon. And so just kind of like answering some of those questions in the interviews, I think are going to be what might put him as either a top 100 prospect or a top 50 prospect, because he does have a ton of tools. I know Anthony Tresh, our PFF colleague, likes Jackson a lot. He was somebody who hit me up about him. He's just like, what do you think about this guy? So Anthony Tresh on board with one of your my guys. I'm stick with corner. I guess it's a cornerback theme, but I couldn't get out of the show without mentioning Mikey Sainristil, the nickel cornerback from Michigan. This class is loaded with guys who can play nickel, and I am a firm believer that every team in the NFL needs a good, specialized nickel corner, because they're different. They are different from outside corners. They're a different breed. They're a different build, and it's just a different mentality when you're playing closer to the line of scrimmage, when you are playing up against so many different shapes and sizes of wide receivers that offenses will put in the slot. And when you look at this 2023 season from Sainristil, 83.5 coverage grade, 80.3 coverage grade against a clean pocket, and then an 81.8 coverage grade when time to throw is less than 3 seconds. So, that's kind of the beauty of PFF data, is we can sort a lot of this stuff. You can take out those throws where it's like, okay, if the quarterback's holding onto the ball for longer than 3 seconds, who's going to be able to cover these guys? So the coverage grade is obviously going to go a little bit further. So when you can contextualize it a little bit better, that gives you a true gauge of how well these guys can cover within a regular set of circumstances. So Sainristil is somebody who, you mentioned you love guys who come up and hit, not afraid to be physical. He is absolutely that type of player. He's a great blitzer. He loves to help and run support. He loves to get physical with you. He's a little bit smaller, and he's not the fastest dude when it comes to long speed, but the short area explosiveness, which is a key athletic attribute to playing the slot position to guard these wide receivers who have the two-way freedom and the two-way flexibility with different routes. That's the kind of player that you need. So I love the mentality. I love the physicality. I love the type of athlete that he is. And I think that he is going to be a starting nickel player at the next level.